So, when I was quite young, about 10 or 11, I think, I remember looking at a world map. It was like my dad had a bit of an office and there was a world map on the wall. And I always liked doing jigsaws and things like that from quite a young age. And I remember looking at it and it suddenly dawned on me that it was like a giant jigsaw. So, yeah, and I didn't realise at the time that this had kind of been already proven, and a lot of theories are that it was just like one landmass, and then over time earthquakes and volcanoes and things happened and it all started breaking up. So yeah, it actually makes perfect sense when you think about it like that. And obviously, it's not like a perfect jigsaw, but there's going to be bits of islands and bits that have just kind of sunk down to the sea. So yeah, change is the only constant when it comes to landmass and countries. And obviously the actual, land itself can change through natural disasters, which have always happened. You wouldn't think so the way they go on about it today, but it actually has always happened. And yeah, whether we're here or not, that will continue, I think. And also borders, you only need to look at old maps to see that borders have always changed. No, it's just constantly being rewritten. And this jigsaw, for example, which was made in 1991, so it's very retro. Actually, if you look at it, a country which is being spoken about a lot at the moment doesn't exist on this map. So it's just Russia, and the nearest countries to Russia at that time were Poland and Romania, a bit of Czechoslovakia. So yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how there can be such a fuss over something which actually hasn't existed for very long, really. And what makes a country as well, I think what makes a country more than anything is the culture and the people and the food and all that type of thing, and the language. And that's what makes a country at the end of the day. And more than the land itself, the land itself maybe isn't as important as the people and the culture. And I would say it's always better to save the people and the culture over just the actual physical land itself, because like I say, that's always something which has changed over time anyway. So take Tibet, for example. Tibet, we all know, was really terribly invaded by China, and they did some horrendous things. And there was a lot of support for Tibet, that they should free Tibet and all of that, but did it come to anything? No. Why not? I don't know. Maybe because Tibet, the land, didn't have many resources and oil and gas and all that type of thing. Maybe it would have been a different story if they did. Also, maybe they didn't at the time want to fall out. The Western world might not have, the leaders didn't want to maybe fall out with China and have a war with China. So who knows? But it's interesting, isn't it, that there was like a lot of, I heard of sterilization and lots of murder and stuff, killing the children. Just forced sterilization is bad enough anyway, isn't it? But there was a lot of horrendous things that happened. I mean, the Chinese did pretty bad things to their own people anyway, never mind the next door neighbours. So yeah, but the point is, those people didn't stay and fight because they would have all just been slaughtered. They chose to flee. So it's kind of a fight or flight, and I'd say that flight is the best option whenever possible, really. I think fighting should be a last resort, So if you're backed into a corner and there's no other option. But if the flight is an option, which obviously they flew to India, and good for India, they gave them somewhere to go, and they still live there to this day, and they very much made that little bit their own country. So yeah, I'd say that little part of India is more like now, that's like Tibet, and people go there and they embrace the culture, and it's a really beautiful thing. And yeah, I think India should get a lot of respect for kind of homing them and looking after them in that way. So not like giving them just tents to live in, I mean, obviously in that kind of climate, you wouldn't be able to survive anyway, but, they've actually let them, have that area, I think, as far as I know. I never went there myself. I would have liked to have gone, but it was very far north. But yeah, everyone who went seemed to have really enjoyed the experience, and they've been very much treated, I think, as something special, as special people, which they are special people. So I think that's nice, rather than just being like, this burden of like, oh God, where are we going to put them in some god awful hotels or campsites or something, which seems to happen to a lot of refugees. So yeah, but obviously the best thing is to have no refugees. And how can we have no refugees? By not having these war zones in the first place. So most people, I think, actually want to just stay in their own country as long as it's safe, as long as they can manage to survive and live there okay, and feed themselves, clothe themselves, and have a nice quality of life. So I think if we just focused on getting most countries or all countries to that level, I don't think we would have the refugee problem in the first place anyway. So I think that's, it's the whole prevention is better than a cure kind of scenario yet again. So yeah, that's my views on it. Also, I'm a bit of a gypsy soul anyway, so I think it's kind of crazy to me that, people would kind of die for a house or a bit of land, really, because, it's quite, just find somewhere else, It might not be fair, it's not fair, I agree with that, it's absolutely not fair, but then life isn't fair, as my dad always used to say to us. I never told you life was fair. That was one of his favourite things to say. So, yeah, I think to this day, that's certainly one thing I can agree with him on. So, yeah, it's like just sometimes in life, you've just got to accept that is the way it is and just go with the flow, move on, and maybe, you might end up making a better life for yourself somehow, or just see it as an adventure if possible. But yeah, I just don't think that the land itself is really worth fighting and dying over when you think that it has always changed. Countries have always changed and moved, and borders have always moved. So I think if the border has to move a bit again, then some countries might expand. Certainly some countries are wanting to expand. Not naming any names, but yeah, the promised land, if you look it up, there's certain people who believe they have been promised by God, if you want to believe in God. I think if God has promised you land, then you shouldn't really have to create huge armies and fight for it. Surely God should find a peaceful way where, it's just going to be given to you. That's my opinion on it. But obviously some people have strong beliefs that they have the right to do whatever they need to do to get their promised land. So it stretches from the two rivers. So I can't remember the names, but yeah, apparently that's what the stripes on the certain flag with the star represent, is the two rivers. So I don't think there will be peace in that region until they have got that area. And sadly, that probably means a lot of people are going to die unless those people are to say, okay, you can have the land. I really can't see that happening, but perhaps, if that was to happen, maybe a lot of the conflicts would then stop. But or the other thing is for them to give up on their plan and say, okay, we're not going to take the land in between those two rivers anymore. We're going to, stay as we are. Again, I can't really see that happening because I think people have such strong beliefs that that is their, their promised land, their right, whatever, I just think ridiculous. And again, with the other country, beginning with you, I think if that country has to contract a little bit, if that means there's going to be peace in the region and a lot of lives will be saved on both sides, I would say that is much more preferable. So that's my opinion on it. Obviously, the people in charge I don't think care about lives lost. They care more about the resources and the power and, you know, what that land's worth, kind of thing, geopolitically and everything like that, you know. But yeah, that's what's going on, I'd say.